This is a report about the continuing activities of the Grand Order's primary questing party. Moving forward, pursuit of the Cult of the Dragon. After we had completely cleared the compound within the underground staging area that is in the mountain pass to the west of Phandalin, we put our heads together to find out what we knew about this Bacon Caliban, to find out that he's a contact who is one of the primary warehousers and people regarding shipping of goods within Waterdeep for the Yartar Guild Order. So, we knew that the Cult of the Dragon had hooked their wagon up with a potent figurehead for their group, as long as he remained unknown to be sympathetic to their order. So, we set off again in pursuit of the Cult of the Dragon and the treasure that they had stolen from the valley. We were making good ground on them. We didn't have a hefty wagon or several. When we exited the valley, or the mountain pass, to the logging town of Kheldell. Kheldell is a very small town, but it is noteworthy for being founded by a wizard, whose name is Gelkin. This was quite some time in the past. However, Gelkin is still in residence as the head of the town. How that is during the time of when magic went haywire, he caught a spell, got stuck, but he received one of the most beneficial effects of casting a spell and having it go awry. It returned him back to his youth, still maintaining all that he knew, and now he appears to be about the age of 30 or so human years, and he is enjoying his second youth. He appears to be very much a man of the people. We found him in the tavern, the Cedar Chest, and he seemed to be getting on with a bunch of the loggers. So we dined and we approached him, wanted to know what he knew of the caravan that had gone through, and informed him that they were rife with the Cult of the Dragon. He himself, being no friend of theirs, offered to assist us in tracking them down. He offered to teach me a spell, locate object, giving me a scroll, and letting us know that one of their teamsters had a special trade coin that he himself had created using his transformation abilities. It bore his face, so it would be unique enough to be attached to that locate object spell. So we have a way of tracking at least one of their members if they get into tune. So, I took advantage of his hospitality. Turns out his tower is quite expansive and well hidden. But impressive enough for a wizard who's been in one location for quite a bit of time. He even offered me the spell Levitate, which he himself finds very useful in his works, for future favours, which I'm fine with. He seems to be an upright chap. Not the type I'd, begrudge a bit of help or advice along the way. Although we are very much akin of a power level, he has had the advantage on me of a human lifetime's worth of studies, and admittedly, a bit more research and a more well-rounded selection of spells himself. Something that I'll rectify long before I've reached even the first of his ages, but nonetheless, it was kind of him. In addition, he wrote us a letter of introduction to Tabra, the owner of one of the fest halls of Bargewright Inn, Bargewright Inn is a riverfront town that at one point was an inn that serviced trade and since then has expanded out. As teamsters enter in and need services, caravans come through, and many of them take advantage of the river to use the barges. We were originally going to go right past it, but Gilkin suggested that we stop there. It would give us a good vantage point to see the caravans that we are hunting, manned by the Cult of the Dragon, and being likely that they might go to Bargewright Inn to acquire transit. Considering that they are tied in with a merchandising house, it seemed to be prudent. We spent far too long talking about all of this, but eventually we set off again. After we left Kheldell, we continued along the path heading to Red Larch. That would take us to the high road that would eventually lead us to Waterdeep if we pursued it all the way, or off to Bargewright Inn where Gilkin recommended we go to talk to Tebra. And when we were getting close to Red Larch, we could see the fires rising up from their food and their meals. Fortunately, not because the town was burned again, as it had been a few weeks ago by the cultists. We came across, and I do not believe that he did not hear us, but they're dumb creatures. A hill giant was o'erlooking the town, planning on running amok. He was hefting a rock and looking on at the people and thinking of what it was going to do. Well, we weren't going to have that now, were we? The fight was almost anticlimactic. Turns out that we're quite fearsome against a single opponent. I flanked out, of course, to cover everybody and provide overwatch in case one of us got into a bit of too much trouble. Belphegor moved up and hacked at it and did a fair amount of damage. As a matter of fact, most of us moved up and did a fair amount of damage. It had its choice of targets and chose to slam its club down on poor Belphegor, who weathered the blows as a good dwarf should, although he was hurting from it afterwards. But I watched, I prepared, but I didn't see nothing to be too worried about. The giant decided that we had shredded it badly, left it bloodied after our first engagement, so it decided to run away, and promptly got chased down by, I believe it was... oh, Malark. Yes, Malark did the death blow upon it, knocking it down and impaling it through the eye with a sapling that was sticking new to the ground. It won't trouble anyone anymore, that's for certain. We found evidence that it had been predating upon the sheep and flocks of the area, so again, no one will miss it. For the most part, there wasn't much to the vile creature. No great treasure to speak of. So we continued on to Red Larch. Again, they were busy all taking care of their town, but they didn't have much to offer us. Just a word of thanks after we destroyed the ogre, or giant, the hill giant, yes, it was a hill giant. And, yes, without much more, we just continued on. They confirmed that the caravan infested with cultists had just left shortly after us, or shortly before us arriving. So we could actually see it in the distance, the dust kicked up from all their wagons. And quite honestly, we were hot to go after them, but we had a discussion on how we would proceed. I was for tailing them in case they had left off members or left behind anything that could give us any information. The others were more for going around them and ahead of them, which if we were going to attack them and ambush them, I could have seen, but... well, we decided that we'd head up to Bargewright Inn instead by bypassing them through the forest and moving clear ahead, which we accomplished without great difficulty. At one point, their sentries did spot us. However, it weren't nothing. They looked at us and did nothing about it. And we weren't about to engage their entire encampment. We'd be outnumbered by, 15 to 1. Those aren't good odds. Quite honestly, they are not good odds even for heroes such as ourselves. Eventually, we'd be dragged down, and even Kythian needs a certain amount of time to do all of his healing. And only so much of that. So, instead we bypassed them and headed on to Bargewright Inn. An interesting enough little town. A series of warehouses out on the riverfront, dotted with the residences of the wealthy, with a good stout wall separating them from the surrounding countryside. Then below that, all of the different trade shops supporting the town. Fest halls and dining facilities and such. And they had their own wall, a bit cruder and less efficient, around that, with a gate to go in. We got in without any great difficulties. They barely paid us any attention. And we went into the fest hall owned by Tegra. We gave her the letter of invitation, which she immediately recognized was from Gilkin, asked who we are, and I told her that we were members of the Grand Order. I wished to draw a reaction in case there were any dragon cultist sympathizers who were there, and I didn't notice anything too great, but my hope is that if word gets out that we're there, they'll try something. And when they do, we'll be able to bloody their nose again and perhaps prosecute that into a fight where they can't quite so easily defend themselves with their numbers. But I digress. Tegra then asked us our purpose, and I asked to talk to her in private. If ye can see this, ye have passed through the magical protections that I have put upon this recording. For what is recorded here is considered to be a great secret, only to be entrusted by those that the Grand Order can implicitly trust, as well as myself and my comrades. We talked to Tegra, and we found out the reason why Gelkin told us she was such an aficionado of the artifacts of ancient Nethril. It turns out that Tegra herself is of ancient Nethril. She was an apprentice who was cast away when Nethril fell, quite literally in most cases, out of the sky from their great sky enclaves. But she was sent away before the actual Netherese Empire completely collapsed. So she survived by use of powerful magics, unsurprisingly. When our type of magic, our arcane magic, extends life, it's at the loss of others. In this case, a marauding force of some vile illithid that she slaughtered in order to extend her life and also to gain revenge for the horrible things that they had done to her master, who was one of the founders of Netheril itself. So, she was still very much alive, and she was sympathetic to us. She had no love of the cult of the dragon, as undoubtedly the Netherese would not. But my feeling on her is that she is trustworthy. I don't think Gilkin would have her pegged wrong, but even he does not know her secret. We were able to pry it out of her with a few leading questions and noting her more than casual interest in the Netherese culture. So, we now know her secret. We wanted to know what she could do to help us, to what advice she could give us to be able to strike at the cult. And she told us how things were in Bargewright Inn. Because they are tied to one of the merchants, they are unassailable by us. Should we attempt to do anything to them, we will be in the wrong, according to the masters of this town. So, we are going to have to be clever, we're going to have to think our way through things, and it's unlikely that we will be able to do anything to them until they are very much on the river. If, that is, they choose to travel further by barge. Now, we do want to recover the goods that they have taken, so that we can give them back to those that they had wronged, of course. But if we should, say, sink their barges, we will be hurting a lot of innocent people, and we'd have to go through the trouble of trying to find all that treasure. I do not see that as a very attractive option. On the other hand, the natures of dragons is to sit on their hoard. I don't think they'll be dispersing it all throughout the town. So wherever they go with it, we may have to do something somewhat unsavory in order to return possession of their ill-gotten gains in a way that's usually used to gain ill-gotten gains. But I think at this point almost anything we do against that cult is justified. We'll have to see what the group agrees to next time. But we've discovered quite a few interesting things. And for the most part, our time spent in Bargewright Inn so far has been pleasant but uneventful. Tegra seems to be a good hostess, and we are prepared to take advantage of whatever opportunities present ourselves going forward. So for the Grand Order, I am, of course, Master Cinderflume, Ferge, on behalf of the Grand Order. Thank you for observing this message, and moving forward, we will report when more has been done. Thank you, and farewell.